Say we always say the Black Panther Party that they can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary.
These are the voices of New Africa. These are the voices of New Africa. These are the voices of New Africa. Free in the land, and we ain't asking y'all. And welcome to everybody to the Voices of New Africa. Can y'all hear me?
I can't hear you.
I want to make sure that I'm hearing you. Welcome to another episode of.
No, I can't hear you.
Of the Voices. Let me see. I think something going on with my microphone, so I'm gonna ask you to take over, comrade.
Oh, can.
Say something.
Yeah. Testing. We on the Voices of New Africa. We here live on Facebook, talking to you live and direct. Three comrades, Kai, Yayla, and Grandmaster are in the house. I know you don't see my mouth moving because I got the mask on. COVID is still in effect in other places, not here with us. So we want to not change the position of covering out and nose and mouth.
Yeah, this is the Voices of New Africa. Y'all bear with us because we got some audio issues going on, but we want to welcome y'all to the show. We're going to get into the show. If y'all out there looking, drop us a comment, drop a like, let us know who out there so we can converse with you. But Grandmaster Teacher, since it seems like your mic is the only one that's really working.
Okay.
We were talking about earlier in the radio portion of our broadcast of how a lot of people talk about black on black violence, so-called black on black crime, and we understand that's more of a political term than a real one. But what is this so-called violence in our community? Where do it really come from?
Okay. As H. Rap Brown used to say, violence is as American as cherry pie. This is American violence. This is not black on black violence. This is violence that has been perpetuated by the capitalist system of America that has pushed us to try to make as much money as we possibly can by any means necessary. And so we see our people being involved in activity in our community because we're an oppressed community, and we have been boxed in certain areas that they used to call the ghetto and different places like that. And so therefore there's a small amount of resources that have been shared by a large number of people. And so therefore we find a lot of things that they call black on black crime is based on the money issue. They go where the money is. This is one of the things that you hear people always trying to say, especially when they're dealing with drugs and other kinds of so-called illegal economy. And so, but let me say this: Malcolm X told us too, in terms of domestic violence, that the worst crime that the white man has done is to teach us to hate ourselves. So therefore, and you go with what we're talking about, educating the uneducated and re-educating the miseducated, because we have been pushed into a position so that we can be divided among ourselves by by not understanding our culture and the system, the capitalist system is doing everything they can to keep our people from getting a true education. You cannot get an education in the system of the enemy. The enemy is always going to miseducate us. The enemy is always going to keep us ignorant of what we should know about ourselves as a people. So consequently, when we start talking, but actually, the NAACP back in the 1980s began to try to characterize crime in the black community as black on black crime. And not only NAACP, but most of the petty bourgeois, the urban league, you know, and it came in, you know, so this was in the 1980s. And so since that time, they have brought us into a conversation about black on black crime, or black on black murder. And all these things have gone all the way back to the days of slavery. They have always been attempt to divide us ever since the end of slavery. And so, but during slavery, the slaves on the plantation, you know, were taught to fight against each other from different plantations. You know, I'm on Mr. Jones' plantation, you know, and we better than you. It's on Mr. Smith plantation. And so when we go back and trace the violence in our community, we can go back and trace it back to the slave plantation, and it has not ceased to exist. And it's been different times that we have overcome those kinds of situations. That is when we have organization. That is during the time of Garvey, when Garvey came into existence in the 1920s, and we had millions of Africans joining organizations, you know, and they did. The FBI was created. The Bureau of Investigation, which later became called the Federal Bureau of Investigation, did everything they could to break up any kind of organized form of black folk, you know, that black folk came together. And then in the 1960s, you know, under the Nation of Islam, the Black Panther Party, the Black Power movement, we saw black people, you know, coming together. The gang broke up. We were able to go into different projects and stuff without being, you know, jumped on or anything by anybody. But it's only when we got organization that have we been able to try to handle certain problems that were happening inside our community. And that's why we started calling ourselves brother and sister and all these kind of things, and the movement that we created. And the Black Power movement was the most significant movement. It not only was a movement inside the United States, it became an international movement. And then we saw African countries being liberated supposedly for, you know, national independence and all that. And at the same time, we had, you know, Africans in the United States and the Caribbean and all that, all being so-called liberated under what they call decolonization. But the decolonization turned out to be neocolonialism. And this is what we are suffering from now when we talk about in America. In the United States, crime is, if we go back and look at the development of gangs in the United States, you can go all the way back to the 19th century in New York and places like that where gangs, you know, started. And when we see what's happening here in terms of gangs in our communities, we see our people talking about their Capone or their some other kind of Italian, Sicilian kind of organization or gang name. And so we have been influenced by American crime, American violence. And as Rep. Brown said, violence is as American cherry pie, which means that when we look at the crimes in the communities in the United States, they don't say white on white crime. They don't say Mexican on Mexican crime in areas where Mexicans are dominated. But when it comes to us, they're talking about black on black crime. And it's something that is a different, unique phenomenon. So this is why we, as revolutionaries, we got to get away from the propaganda that's been put out, but the petty bourgeois forces, what we call the petty bourgeois forces, black middle class forces have taken our conversation away from liberation, from liberation to talking about black on black crime.
I think that's one of the reasons why. Let me
my audio to make sure I'm good. Can y'all hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, yeah, that's one of the reasons why it's really important for us to create and support our own media sources, because if you just immerse yourself into the mainstream media, the mainstream narrative, then you'll find yourself being drawn into a propaganda machine which have you supporting issues and initiatives that really have nothing to do with you. You will think that, oh, we're doing the right thing to really help us, but in reality, we're only fueling a system that is created to exploit us. We'll be talking about, hey, everybody, we got to get out and vote, and for the Democrats and the Republicans and all this black on you. You'll just find yourself repeating bullet points that other people who have agendas that are not necessarily in our best interest. We'll just be repeating these talking points, these bullet points, and not focus on the things that we need to be focused on in order to really solve our problems. Because when you look at our problems, as you pointed out, with the problem of crime within our community, won't say black on black crime, but the problems of crime in our community is, a result of multiple things, of several different things. One is a manifestation of America in general. It's just a manifestation of us being under this system for 400 years, this violent system for 400 years, that is, one, has taught us to hate each other, two, has put us in conditions in an environment that lack the resources that we need to survive, which that creates crime within itself. And two is just, it was built on violence. It was, this country, America, the United States of America, was built on the robbery and genocide of the indigenous people, the kidnap, the threat, and the enslavement and oppression of African people. And so when you look at the violence in our community, it's until we are able to break away from the influence and control of this system, which is producing the environment in which violence can grow, then it's going to be difficult for us to solve our problems, because we're following individuals who are not really focused on making sure the humanity and the needs of the people are fed, are cultivated. They're more so focused on the exploitation of the people so they can gain as much wealth and riches and power as they possibly can, regardless to what that does to the people. So as long as that system exists, then we're going to have a difficult time. And I see you coming back in, so let me go to my comrade. You want to chime in on it?
Well, yeah, it's much been said. I really don't just want to take in all the information, to be honest with you. But it's a lot to be said. It's a lot to be done. We stay fast on making sure it happens. I think I got connected. Something going on. Can you still hear me? Yeah. Okay. I'm not commenting on it right now. I'm just trying to take in all information. It will have a completion of changing our condition if we don't get to a point where we're independent, free. And I don't know how many times I need to hammer that into this show.
There we go. Yeah, just dropped. I think you got a bad connection, comrade. But but I mean, we were talking about a lot of things in our earlier broadcast. It's relevant to into this topic. And, because as we said, we're dealing with a system of oppression, a system that is creating the conditions in which we suffer from. And that's this system in which we have to attack and we have to go under. And earlier, y'all were talking about how this system not only affects us in the United States, but it's a global system. Kind of, if I can get you to come back in, Grandmaster Teacher, and talk about how this affects the global.
Yes. I want to say that one last thing on that. What Malcolm X also said is that they have made the victim the criminal and the criminal the victim. But when we talk about the global economy, the global capitalist system, that is out of 54 states on the continent of Africa, none of them are in control of the resources, particularly the African states. The ones that we're not talking about necessarily the Arab, the dominating states, but the African states, 54 on the African continent, do not control any of the resources. So consequently, what we have is a problem of what are we going to do in terms of revolution? The revolution is going to have to be a global revolution, because there's no independent African state that we know of that can come to our rescue, wherever we are in the world. And when we look at the capitalist system, we look at the oppressor nations, that anytime that anything happens to any one of those, the residents of those nations anywhere, they're going to send their army to go to overthrow or to capture or to bring people back within the context of their power. We do not have any power like that. So therefore, we have to use our organization and organize wherever we are in the world. Like in the United States, we have to deal with mobilizing ourselves to gain control of the 5 states here. But we know that this cannot, in and of itself, solve our problem, because we're dealing with a global capitalist system. And so anytime that one country, this is what we talked about earlier, rises up to try to claim its resource, like Venezuela. We're using that Venezuela as an example. The United States has embargo. The same kind of embargo it imposed on Cuba when Cuba, declared its independence in 1959, 1960, 61. And so the oil, Venezuela has the richest oil resource of almost any nation in the world, and they're not able to sell their oil. So therefore, you got people coming from Venezuela, leaving Venezuela to come up to the United States to live in the United States. But the first element were those people who are already wealthy, and they were able to steal their wealth, just like, some of the Cubans, when Cuba, declared its independence, the rich Cubans came and lived over in Miami. Well, you got Venezuelans that are coming up, that's doing the same thing. And so we talked earlier about Panama, and one of the things we didn't talk about Panama, they went and captured, Noriega, the president, the sitting president of Panama, and tried him and put him in prison in the United States. And because Panama was wanted to take control of the Panama Canal, and this was an agreement that was supposed to have been taking place, I think, from Carter, or was it Clinton, that they're supposed to give the canal back, to control the canal to Panama. But when they tried to exercise control, and Noriega didn't buy into the policies of the global capitalist system, so they overthrew him. The same thing in Haiti when Aristide was elected president. George Bush sent the Marines to kidnap Noriega and drop him off into the Central African Republic, him and his wife. And Randall Robinson and Maxine Waters, from California, had to go and rescue them from the French colony, used to be a French neo-colony in Central Africa, and took them to South Africa. These are the kind of things that we have to begin to understand that what the global capital system does. And we talk also about how, like even when even the so-called most democratic president, what's his name, Johnson, back in 1964, sent the Marines to keep socialist government from coming into existence in the Dominican Republic, of all places, which is right next to Haiti. And we talked also about, in other words, anytime what they call it, the Monroe Doctrine. In 1823, President James Monroe, I think the fourth slave president, he was a slave master, declared that the Western Hemisphere was the United States territory. So therefore, warning all other nations that they can't come into the Western Hemisphere. The United States is in charge of everything that goes on. And so that's when you had Nicaragua being taken over in the 1850s. Nicaragua was taken over. They called it the Banana Republic. And so in the capitalist system, the companies are basically in control of the politics of what goes on with the economy in the world. And so consequently, when we talk about what we're trying to do in terms of the Republic of New Africa, we understand, and what Malcolm said, we must internationalize our struggle. That means we got our own foreign policy, and we're going to have our own military to take control of our communities so that we can, so we can control and police our own community, police ourselves, because we're for self-determination. And self-determination means that we must govern ourselves. And so therefore and we recognize that, whatever steps we take, we're going to have things happening throughout the world and all the other African countries to be able to support us as a nation. And so therefore, when we have this next election, we're going to be doing a plebiscite so that we can be recognized by the UN as a nation, as the Palestinians, as any group, a national group that's in the world has had to have recognition from existing world, nation states, that we're also a nation state, and therefore we'll be able to solve our own problem. We will not be able to solve our problems under the oppressor nation called the United States, or the oppressor nation called France, or the oppressor nation called Britain. So we got to begin to understand that break out of liberation, we had to have our own nation state.
Yeah. It's something very important thing.
You brought up the next elections and the plebiscite, which we're moving toward. Why is it important that we have this plebiscite and we declare ourselves as a nation and we get recognized by the UN? What's the benefits of that for people who don't know?
Okay, so Malcolm X was the first one that said that he was going to take, one of the first ones back, that to take our problems to the UN. And, we see, but we understand that the UN is in control by most of the oppressor nations. We understand. But by that same token, when we get to hearing, there are enough states in the United Nations that can hear us and hear our plea for recognition. And so basically that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to attain recognition, but we know we have to organize ourselves so we have another election this year, in which we're going to be organized to do a plebiscite. The plebiscite is very important because they have shut out any information about us in existence. We got to be really clear. There is no nation or no organization that has, has been able to get the hearing of the people themselves. So therefore, we have to get out and advertise ourselves to even our own people to get them involved, so that the larger number that we have, that to come together to say that we are part of the Republic of New Africa, that is going to give us leverage to be able to move in whatever area, whatever state, or whatever we decide we want to do to determine that this is our, and we've declared 5 states to be our nation. That is Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, and South Carolina, where we had majority population at one time, and we governed in those areas. And then there are other areas that are close to these areas that we're going to be drawing our people into, because the majority in many parts of the United, particularly in the Delta, that goes down from Memphis all the way down to New Orleans. Sometimes people say St. Louis all the way down to New Orleans. So when we start talking about that where we are, and we are still the majority of Africans, New Africans, are still in the so-called Southern Confederate, what used to be called the Southern Confederate States. And so we're going to be exercising. It'll give us the leverage to be able to move in and organize our people to understand that we are a nation. We have continued to be a nation from the beginning of the time that we came here to the United States.
Yeah, definitely. And
I think it's important to understand, in order to be recognized as a nation by the UN, you don't necessarily have to have control of the land.
Right.
You just have to be contested. You have to have a claim for which we have already made that claim. I think the other qualifications, you have to have an identifiable people, which we have, and what else? Land mass, in which we're claiming, and it's another one that I can't think of. And we have to have a government. We have to have a government, which we have. That's why the Republic of New Africa is set up, the provisional government of the Republic of New Africa. But once you get recognized, that also, doesn't that open you up to certain resources and the ability to do business with other nations?
Yeah, because you have alliance. We'll be able to have alliance, with our own foreign policy. That is, whatever country in the world that we want to, to deal with, or trade with, or whatever, we'll be able to do it. We will not be put under the risk of being put in prison in the United States, what they call it, dealing with a foreign nation. So we are going to be in a foreign nation ourselves, and we're going to have the ability to trade with or associate with any nation in the world that we decide that we want to be a part of our foreign policy. And this is one of the things that we're also developing, is foreign policy, because I think we've talked in the past about how the United States are dealing with people like Omali Yeshitela, when the FBI went to raid his house and the headquarters of the Uhuru movement, the African People's Socialist Party, and they're still being charged, with having a relationship with Russia. When we have our plebiscite and we pull ourselves together and pull our structure together and become a part of and be voted into the United Nations as the Palestinians are, we will not be subject to that kind of harassment or that kind of oppression by the United States government.
so,
In essence, in essence, just by getting recognized by the UN, that helps to break some that chain hold of dependency that we have on the United States of America, and really pushes up, help us go toward our goal is for national liberation, for independence. So yeah, and also in our whole fight to gain reparations, don't being accepted or being acknowledged as a nation in the UN, doesn't that help us, because nations get reparations? Or can you just kind of speak to that?
Oh, you want me to say? Yeah. Okay, reparation. Like, so our first thing for reparation is that we got land is part of is a basis of trying to get power and reparation. So even the question of it goes all the way back. If we look at the Nation of Islam, for example, had called for reparation and land given to Africans in America who have been oppressed, and for us to separate from the United States. And so consequently, there have never been any reparations given without winning a war. We're in a war, and in order for us to ultimately get reparations, what they're talking about giving reparations to individuals, it does not amount to real reparation. Reparation has to go with a victory being achieved by people for their liberation, and the enemy, if the enemy still exists, has to pay that reparation, for our ability to pull ourselves back up to, for ourselves. And so consequently, like when we talk about reparations, land has to be the greater part of any reparation. So we know that money, if given, will be can be devalued. So, and the system, the capitalist system, will not allow individuals or even groups of people who are not in nations to be able to take advantage of any kind of funds being given. We know that because it is not, because we deal with the welfare systems and things like that, and we deal with the money that was given during the pandemic. We were not able to benefit from any of those kinds of funding that came from the United States government, because the system is set up for us to pull the money back into the capitalist system. So therefore, when we talk about reparation, our reparation will be to the point of having our 5 states, and also we're part of the world reparation movement, because the oppressive nation is still taking from the resources. They have to give back the resources. They have to give the control of the resources that are in that are in the various areas where we are in the world. And so consequently, when we talk about reparation, we're not talking about a welfare system being developed by the United States to give us some little parcels of land individually, and because really the American hypocrisy is that to get people of America to think that they are, independent if they're given a home or given a few acres of land or something like that. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about complete and total independence from the United States government. And we're talking about that, and to the world, the United States has a lot, and the European nations have a lot that they owe African people. New African people are going. There are over 100 million in the Western Hemisphere, and Malcolm, when he was coming back, he was going to organize. He was going to create an organization for not only the Africans in the United States, but in the Western Hemisphere. And this is where we are, and we are in a strategic position because we have aided every independent, movement that has taken place since the 1900s.
got to come in.
Well, just to add on to what Grant said, when we understand that, and sometimes we can only draw back from our history to get to this point, but we're telling you here on the Voices of New Africa that freedom consists of one of the most important things is land. And we cannot allow anyone to take our hopes and dreams away and our efforts away from being free by getting us to agree to some reparations that don't include land for all of our people. We call it we've been dealing with these folks for so long. They got every trick of their day. They're going to add the $5 million in California to some African Americans. And what that happens is it enables them to produce some petty bourgeoisies in our community that won't feel the need or importance of continuing to struggle to be free because they could. Okay, my thing going in and out. Hear me? Yeah, so we can't let people divide our gold up by dividing us up because the more petty bourgeoisies that they produce by just giving us money is going to take away from the masses of people that we have to push for our independence. And what I was about to say is that the petty bourgeoisie get to a point where they're comfortable the way things are, and they would rather keep it the way they are and put that ahead of the future for their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, where we know that we have to have an opportunity to self-govern ourselves, practice self-determination, and work collectively as a nation of people in order to make the adjustments that need to be made to change our conditions. Collectively, it's going to work. When they start dividing us up like they've been doing, remember their efforts will continue to divide us. So let's talk collectively. Let's talk land mass for our nation of people. And let's talk about independence and creating our own economic system. Let me just say this. One example that we have of a people that has been have been blindsided or led astray, bamboozled with the land is our brothers and sisters that are Native American. The reservations isn't total autonomy of the land under your own independent sovereign nation. And that's why if you go to a lot of the reservations, they have examples of the ones that were allowed to create casinos, to create wealth in the community. But there's a number of, you can go to South Dakota, and we can look up South Dakota and see the Indian reservations and how the people live low and they put y'all away. Put y'all away from us. We don't have to worry. We don't have to worry about yourself. And then when it comes to rules, guidelines, yeah, well, I don't know what's going on with this. I might have to go outside and talk to the community. Okay, so yeah, and that's it. Just don't let them hoodwink us and bamboozle us, and talk a good game about land, but all the time not relinquishing all rights to the land, but giving us the land and putting us in this about even will land back into the government.
Ownership of the house right now.
Ownership of the house right now.
It's controlled by
it's controlled by this system in government. Because as soon as you feel your obligation to them as exclusive users of the land, they can charge enough money so that your children can't maintain that land through taxes and assessments and all of that.
Yeah, and real quick, jump in here. If y'all out there, make sure y'all drop a like and drop a comment so we can converse with you and we can continue this conversation with you. A lot of good points. Did you have anything you want to share with that? Come in there with that message.
Yeah, because land in America is not, in other words, is not a sign of it. It's only when you are able to control a whole bunch of land. That is, you have your own bank and you have your own, yeah. So the people who don't want us to be a nation have themselves been a part of a nation before they came to America. They're still a part of the European, nations or whatever other nations they were a part of before they came to America. We didn't come here like that. We came here involuntarily. And that is why we are demanding that we be separate, that they recognize our separation from this system, so that we'll be able to do those things that will be necessary and won't be dependent upon the U.S. government, the United States government, which does not really represent anything but the rich and the super rich. And so consequently, what we want to do is create a whole new world. We want to see the world change, and we don't want to see the same system still in existence. So we know that they're going to figure out a way to eliminate us from having power in any kind of in any form. And one of the things when he talked about the native people is that they got native people that want to consider to be citizens of the United States, and they're still not citizens of the United States. They still are a separate nation, and they're still treated as a separate nation. Matter of fact, the ones that have become rich, they have figured out ways to steal that money from them, to steal that whatever wealth they've accumulated in many instances by Europeans marrying into the families of the oppressed native people.
Definitely.
Yeah, y'all excuse us. We've been having a few technical difficulties. This is a live broadcast. And matter of fact, I'm having.
There you go.
There we go. Yeah, we've been having some technical difficulties, especially with the audio, but it's a live broadcast and things like that happen. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And like I said, drop a like, drop a comment, let us know who you are, so we can converse and we have a back and forth with the audience, because we have the most politically aware audience in the land. And, y'all are a very important part to what we do every day, and we appreciate y'all support as always. But yeah, I know in the beginning, the title of the show is what's the real cause of black on black violence, and we talked about that, and we talked specifically about the system, and we kind of moved in a lot of different directions, and talked about how this system affects us on a global level, and we talked about the need for a plebiscite and the need for nationhood and to be recognized in the UN as a nation, as an oppressed nation, because that's really what we are. We're an oppressed nation, and we're under the authority of the oppressor nation. In our case, it's the United States of America. I'm so used to saying United Snakes. It's hard for me to even say United States anymore. But that's really, what we are, because a lot of people, we get kind of caught up, and we look at, man, a nation like this is such a big idea. But the reality is that we've always been a nation ever since we was placed forcibly under the system of chattel slavery. We became a nation. We became an oppressed nation, a nation even though we didn't have necessarily the power at the time to define ourselves, and we don't have control over the land and the resources in the land, that still does not mean that we are a nation, because we are unified under a common oppression and a common oppressor. We can call it a national oppression and a national oppressor. And as soon as all of us came up under this system of chattel slavery, which has evolved into capitalism, in which we suffer from today, as soon as the first African person was forcibly put into that system, that inhumane, brutal system, the Black nation, the new African nation, was created. It started at that point. So the nation exists whether you want to be a part of it or not, whether you recognize it or not. But it is in our best interest to understand that and to grow this nation into and fight for our independence and free the land. That's why we say free the land. We're trying to free the land, because our struggle is for land. And land is the foundation of all freedom. So, you don't get it in your head mixed up when we say we're trying to struggle for nationhood and we're trying to get our own independent nation, because regardless of how you feel or what you believe or what you want, we're already a nation. Right. We're just an oppressed nation, and we are under the authority of the oppressor nation. And I see you going in, and now let me try to help you with that. But yeah, you can chime in on anything that I said, anything you want to, Grandmaster Teacher, while I go try to help Kakai.
Okay, so the oppressor nation, and we should say oppressor nations, are in existence today and on the backs of all the oppressed nations. I used to say there's no more gold in California, there's very little gold in California. The gold that is still flowing is coming from out of the continent of Africa or out of South America. So when we talk about organizing ourselves as a people, we're talking about taking back those resources that that have been taken from us, the control of those resources. And as an oppressed nation that's seeking its liberation, one of our first things, our first move, will have to be to get with all the other oppressed nations and nation states in the world, so that we'll be able to have our foreign policy that will allow us to collect on the reparations thing that we're talking about in terms of land and whatever else we talk about in terms of reparations. And one of the things that we have to begin to understand is that our ideology, we have, in other words, has to be that we don't want to be a part of the capitalist system. We want the capitalist system to cease to exist, and we're going to do everything we can possibly to help the capitalist system to cease to exist. But while it does exist, we're going to get with all of the nations that have become socialist in orientation or attempted to gain control of the resources in their land. So we're in the same category in the Western Hemisphere with Cuba and Nicaragua and Venezuela. In other words, the oppressor nation has taken away our ability to take advantage of the resources that are within the borders of our communities. And so consequently, when we, as the Republic of New Africa, we have our own foreign policy, and we are going to organize our own military army so that we'll be able to protect ourselves and defend ourselves as any other nation would be able to do that.
Definitely. A couple of different things going on. We're probably not going to be on
as long as usual in this show, but yeah, we've been having a very good discussion. And like I said, anybody out there, to everybody out there listening, we appreciate all of your involvement in the show. And like I said, drop a comment, let us know what you feel. And matter of fact, just who's listening, so we can acknowledge you. But yeah, this is a global system in which we have been fighting against it has been oppressing us for so many centuries, and we're not going to be able to solve our problems by looking at this as an individual thing, or like we got to get some special individual in office win the president and that's going to magically solve our problems, or we can change the hearts and the mind of certain individuals and that's going to solve the problem. That's not going to be it. The problem is only going to be solved when we change our situation, when we gain control over the things that rule our lives, that when we be able to govern ourselves, when we are able to change the systems that produce the environment that exploits us. As long as we have a system that produces the exploitation, then that's basically what we're going to get. And the individuals who rule and the individuals who benefit from the system are those individuals who are better at exploiting other individuals, other human beings. So that type of system can't exist, and we expect humanity to rise to its fullest potential. But we're about to get up out of here. Before we leave, y'all got any final words? I'm gonna try to go to you, Kakai, to see if your audio will work.
It's all about freeing the land. We gotta have our own land to accomplish the solutions to most of the problems that we're encountering right now in this economic
system in which we live, because until we control the land, we won't be able to control, develop the laws, the institutions, the things that are necessary for us to solve our problems amongst ourselves, because we won't be in a position to control the resources and put the amount of resources we need into the problem to solve it if we don't have our own land. We can't continue to believe that somebody who doesn't want us to solve the problem is going to devote enough resources and allow us to make the decisions that will inevitably solve our problem. So we have to say all remedies have been exhausted, move forward to our own independent sovereign nation, the Republic of New Africa.
All right. Grandmaster T.
Yeah, I think our brother summed it up very well. We got to understand that this system, even though it was built by us, it was built in spite of it was built for the benefit of just of the super rich. And once we understand that, we got to stop saying we when we talk about the United States, or we when we talk about the local government, or we when we talk about people that's supposed to represent us. They don't represent us. They represent the United States government and the oppressor nation. And the oppressor nation will never have a solution for the oppressed nation. The oppressed nation can no longer expect, as our brothers say, remedies we've gone through all the remedies. We've made all the appeals, and all those appeals have gone to nothing, because we see that they're continually taking away whatever human rights that we have to the guise of what they call civil rights. But these are human rights that are being violated. And once we understand that human rights are being violated, then we understand that there's no solution but us to separate ourselves completely from these people.
All right. Definitely. Like I said, I want to appreciate everybody. Say thank you to everybody who's been riding with us on this long journey of NABA, the New African Independence Movement, the Voices of New Africa. But yeah, everybody pretty much said it all. Is eventually, if we want something different, we have to do something different. The blueprint has already been laid out. We have to make sure that it is updated, and we have to make sure we struggle and we fight and we continue that journey to get us closer and closer to liberation, so our grandchildren and our children can pick it up and continue it forth, because it is a protracted struggle. Don't think that this is something that we're going to solve overnight, because we didn't get into this condition overnight. It's going to take a while. It's going to take some generations for us to to get that ultimate goal. So don't act like, oh, we ain't did it yesterday, or you saw some violence within their community and we wondering, what in the world's wrong with our people. The problem is complex, but we understand the blueprint and we understand what we need to be headed and what we need to do. And those things are happening. We just have to make sure that we all play our part and we all contribute to the ultimate goal, and that is freeing our people, gaining real liberation, not no pseudo liberation, not being under the control of an oppressor nation that don't really give a damn about you, that only wants to use, abuse, and exploit you and then throw you away once they've used you up. That is our history in America. So we have to get away from that type of leadership and that type of in control authority. We have to get from up under that so we can actually have the control and the ability to shape our lives in a way that benefits us and our children. And with that, I am Brother Prophecy. You been with our Grandmaster Teacher for Dolly, and of course my comrade, which is off the screen right now, Comrade Kakayi. But this is the Voices of New Africa. We'll see y'all again next week, and we are going to leave y'all with our battle cry, and that is free the land, free the land, free the land. All right, y'all. See y'all again.
Africa, Africa.
My name is Kwaku DC, and I'm one of the brothers on Johns Island here.
Okay.
And what I do a combination of things, but I participate in a lot of Afrocentric programs and to help wake our people up. A lot of people don't know. And trying to make us a better people and be the people that we're supposed to be. Understand that this is a tree that our ancestors, who was on Johns Island, the tree was a place that we buried our people, had ceremonies around this tree in order to honor our ancestors, worship them. But a lot of people don't know it because through history things have been watered down and forgotten about.
We are now on what used to be plantation of Mr. Justice Angel, okay? And so he had this land in the 1700s. And so primarily this tree was on his property even back then. This is the oldest known tree in this part of North America east of the Mississippi River. It was here during the period not just of enslavement, but during the days when the Edisto, the Yamasee, and the Wadmalaw, and various other Native American tribal groups walked this land. So they have the saying, if these streets could talk, they could tell us wonders. The same is true of this tree, because this tree was here when Justice Angel owned this plantation, where, of course, many of our ancestors from the Johns Island area were once enslaved.
The people that are buried under this tree. Because, as it was saying, this was a marker of graves one time. On the plantation, they buried their trees so they can know where their people was buried. No ceremony for my people in this land. We remember them today because we need the positive energy of the ancestors be with us in our travel, as our journey. We need the power of the ancestors not to survive, but to live. We live, we don't survive, animals survive, we live. As Africans, we live. No matter where we are, We live because we have the DNA information of Africa in us, and whatever name was before they named it Africa, we are. Mama Africa.
I knew about it, but
Yeah, your children in this strange land cry.